Hey everyone, this is Gunjan here, and I'm going to share my asynchronous lab report. So I'm going to start the screen sharing. Okay, moving in here. So this is my lab report, relatively short, but the works were quite extensive. Um, so first things first. So I finished designing the experiment in PsychoPy. So the screenshot you are seeing in here includes uh, all the components of that experiment. So if I explain a little bit in here, so the blue circles that you are the semicircles circles you are seeing in here at the beginning. So at the beginning, not actually throughout the whole experiment, are the routines or the part of that experiment that will be displayed on the screen. So the first part is just like the beginning of the study, like telling the participants about their rights as a participant if they're participating in the study. This segment, so on all the segments, these are the 6 tasks that I had, and they will be looped. So these are looped. So for each experiment, there are like 2 parts in here. So first part is a sample test, like for practice. So there are like certain instruction for each task, and so I have provided a sample task at the beginning where they will just get acquainted with the task and like also get acquainted with the instructions that they have to follow. And afterwards there is a blank page, not a blank page, like it just says like, okay, just proceed to the next task. And then the third part is the actual task where there are like 50 images and the input will be recorded, but for the sample the input will not be recorded. And then there's a blank page which says like press a space bar to proceed to the next task, and then next task begins. But so if we consider all of this as sets, so we have 6 sets, and you can see there is an outer loop for that. So what the outer loop will do is it will randomize between these sets, among these sets. So if one participant gets a set of a set of experiments in front of them, the another participant will have a different set of experiments. Like so, it's just randomized. The orders are randomized. So I finished doing that, and the experiment will provide an output file, which is a CSV file. But the problem is it generates lots of columns in here. So what we actually need is like just some conditions, like where the source is, whether what the color map is, whether the images are shaded or not shaded, and the correct answers and participants' answers and the response time. But as we are creating loops within these experiments, it's just generating like lots of columns, which we actually don't need for the data analysis. So we have to clean up that data sheet either in the PsychoPy or we do a post-processing, but like changing it within PsychoPy might mess up the whole experiment. So we decided to go with like post-processing of that CSV file, which I will talk about in the later slide. And there's a post-task questionnaire for this experiment. So we decided to include that in PsychoPy, but it gets complicated because there's like, so in PsychoPy, there's like no good way to put the rankings in there. So that's why Dr. Pingle and I like suggested, and I accepted that suggestion, that to contact that with paper, and then I will just manually input that in a separate Excel sheet. So I did 2 test runs of the experiment, thanks to Shashank and Dr. Pingle to participate in the test run of the study. So it was kind of helpful because it's just not about the experiment. It's also about like how I'm interacting with the participants and what additional thing they might need, or also what additional instruction they may need. So I made adjustments based on that experience in the user interface, and also in my script that I have to communicate with the participants. So again, thanks to Shashank and Dr. Pingle for participating here. So the next thing is about the CSV data cleaning. So as I was talking about that, like there are like plenty of columns, but I actually don't need all of them. So I decided to write a code which will extract those specific columns and put it in a different sheet, which will have less columns. And the problem is like, so I have 6 tasks. So for the 6 tasks, it actually creates like 6 columns for participant response and 6 columns for participant response time. But there are like 300 images of it. So but in each task there are like 50 images. So when so I can actually show one of the raw data sheet that I have. Just give me a second. Okay, so here's this data sheet that I was talking about. So there are like so as you can see, like there are like redundant columns in here, and these are just counting the trial numbers in here. So I have 50, so it's just counting from 0 to 49. So just putting it in the CSV file. So what I was actually talking about, so for my first task was the map rotation task, and it generates the correct answers and the response time in here. But the problem is when that 50 is ended, that column stays in there, and it creates 2 separate columns for the next task. So the remaining these rows remains unfilled. So what Dr. Pingle was suggesting to do is to put all the correct answers and the response times in a single sheet, so that it's easier for us to analyze it in the later part. And we can always extract that test information based on the first column that we have, that is file name, and the file name actually has the task name integrated on it. So we can actually filter out the test later on. So I sorry for that. I wrote a code for that, but the thing is, so I was actually successful in picking the required data from the CSV file, but somehow it was also generating some redundant blank rows. So it worked, but it didn't quite actually work. So Dr. Pingle has written a new code for that to handle it more efficiently. I prepared this lab report yesterday, so I didn't put Dr. Pingle's code in here, but I'm going to use Dr. Pingle's code to clean my CSV data sheets. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is about last style merging and defining projections. So for one of the tasks in my city level DSM layer thermal layer overlay over DSM, I needed to download like around 90 tiles for an area that is selected. It's in Georgia. So the problem that I was having, like when I was creating the tiles, it was not projected, and I couldn't find the projection info in there. So so I was like, Dr. Pingle was guiding me through it, and I actually didn't know that the last files are usually projected in some local coordinate system. So what I did was like I was going through it, like which projection could be it. Then I got an idea that, okay, let's go to the metadata, so I downloaded the data from National Map website, and there's this information called so whenever we go to the National Map website, there are like this hyperlinks in here. So usually we just click on the download link, LSZ, but there's this other hyperlink which is called the vendor metadata, where if you click on here, you will see a big XML file has appeared in a different window. So if we just search for projection, then the projection information is in there, but it's not quite integrated with the LiDAR data. So what we can do is like we can take that information and just put it in the LiDAR files, and I use that using ArcPro. But but there are like other tools in here. So what I did was I created the so first I created the LAS tiles using ArcGIS. So I just put all the LAS. So I first converted LAS to LAS using LAS zip. And then I just put all the LAS files in a newly created LAS dataset in ArcGIS Pro. And then I projected it and like extracted and I saved it as a LAS file. So one of the easier things to do and like less time consuming to do is to use the LAS tools. And LAS tools has different segments in here. In there, so what we can do is like we can convert the LAS to LAS, or we actually don't even have to convert that. Then what we can do is like we can merge the LAS tiles into one single LAS tile using LAS merge, which is much easier and less time consuming. And if we have the projection information, we can just apply the projection information into the LAS tile using LAS to LAS. So that's much easier, and it will just take, I guess, 5 to 7 minutes to complete the whole process, so which is much less time consuming than using ArcGIS Pro. And there's we also have a lab resource page in GitHub where Dr. Pingle has created that page with all this information. So take a look at that if you're like, I know that in the lab, lots of people are working with the LiDAR file. So I think this process should be helpful for a lot of people. So just take a look at that page. Okay, and some other updates that, so I have been awarded with the Sigma Chi Research Scholarship. So I'm pretty happy about that. I'm really excited, and I'll be inducted into the Sigma Chi Research Honors Society. And as part of that, I'll also be presenting my research poster on May 4th, which is the award ceremony, and I will be presenting my research. So I'm really excited about it. And this month has been really awarding. After I got the OGIS symposium, like won the OGIS symposium, and then got the Sigma, and got the Seedman Pool Endowment Fund, and then this one. So yeah, this month has been a pretty rewarding month. And I also purchased membership for the CAGIS. So I'm now a student member of CAGIS. So it's good. I also plan to present my research in their conference, which is, I guess, in November. So goals for next week is, so I have my experiment ready, so I'll start running it. So, but before running the actual experiment, I will just do 4 or 5 trials as Dr. Pingle suggested. I still haven't completed the on-site training of VT-US training. So I need to make some time to complete that on-site training of that. And I also have to apply for the student assistantship in AutoCAD 2022. That's the conference I was talking about from CAGIS. So I need to apply for that next week. So that's it for my lab presentation. Thank you for viewing it.